I'm very used to edgy media at this point. After all, I do enjoy giving fair and unbiased reviews of infamous titles whose extreme or taboo content tends to stunlock people. But even I knew I was in for a wild fucking ride when I started Bible Black and was immediately greeted by a satanic cult performing a human sacrifice. Bible Black is a 6-episode adult OVA released in 2003 adapted from the identically titled eroge, which I may eventually cover if my audience is interested. And the basic premise is that of occult rituals, sinister plots, and dark magic all happening in a typical Japanese high school. And before I even really get into it, I do have to acknowledge how interesting this setting is in the context of a Japanese product. Here in the West, we're pretty familiar with occult symbolism. It's been the subject of a lot of fascination over the years and has firmly embedded itself into popular culture. It's also commonly seen in communities with an interesting counterculture due to Christianity and its various sects being the dominant religious ideology in most Western countries. But consider that while Japanese media does have occult aesthetics here and there, Abrahamic religions are an extreme minority in Japan, with the dominant religions being Shinto and Buddhism. So when Bible Black showcases a group of hooded cultists trying to summon a demon from hell, it doesn't have the same cultural familiarity to its intended audience. So while I and many of you watching are plenty used to the dark visuals, Bible quotes, and theological references in Bible Black, hell, the stuff it depicts is pretty much exactly what parents in the 70s thought a D&D session looked like. I think it's worth keeping in mind that it's going to come across as a lot more exotic to a Japanese audience, especially considering that it's strongly implied that Christianity is the accurate religion in this setting, which does not align with the vast majority of religious beliefs within the intended audience. I just find that very interesting. And very quickly, I stream in-depth anime analysis every Sunday at 9 AM Eastern on this channel, Twitch, and Kick. We're currently working through Mushoku Tensei and it's a good time. Hope to see you there. But with that said, what's the actual plot of Bible Black? Minor spoilers ahead, but nothing that'll damage the viewing experience. It starts out fairly cryptic, but there are two clear focal characters. There's the protagonist Minase, a student shown to have some control of magic which he uses to get laid. The second is Kitami, a much more sinister figure who also uses magic for sexual purposes, and we see her taking advantage of a female student and also giving herself a dick. Which, by the way, I can't show it, but it has a really funny sound effect whenever she makes it appear. I don't think it was meant to be funny, but I actually laughed out loud the first time it happened. So you don't really know what exactly the endgame is right away. Kitami is clearly planning something and is searching for a virgin, while Minase is generally being more selfish than actively malicious. And we see a general trend of him thinking more with his lower brain than his upper one. Eventually, things start to form a clearer direction, with it being revealed that Kitami is planning for a ritual of some sort. She ropes Minase into her plans through some combination of temptation and her own magical ability. The core conflict is that of the ritual itself and whatever evil shit it's supposed to do, and Minase's moral struggle, with Kitami pulling him towards darkness and his childhood friend Imari being his lifeline to the light. It does all come to a resolution, but I'm not going to spoil it, partly out of consideration for those of you who'd like to watch it yourselves, but also because I actually don't think it matters all that much. Now I know it's going to be weird to hear me, the guy who really likes to dig into the stories of whatever I'm covering, say this, but I think the writing of Bible Black is one of the least interesting things about the series. It actually kind of shocked me when I sat down to plan this video out and realized there's really not all that much for me to sink my teeth into here. The story follows a pretty standard 3-act structure, with the first 2 episodes establishing the core conflicts, the next 2 building tension and teasing Minase's internal conflict, and the last 2 being the intense climax and eventual resolution of the conflicts. And overall, the story itself is quite mid, which is why it's hard to really talk about. See, as a reviewer and analyst, I can tell you that the best titles to pick apart are the ones that are either really good or really bad, because there are always a ton of things contributing to the overall quality, and they can all be very interesting to talk about. It's the mediocre stories that are rough because there's usually nothing particularly exceptional or even noteworthy about them. They check all the boxes to make a functional story, but they don't really deviate from the core formula or take any risks, for better or worse. And that's the space that Bible Black occupies, though I don't think it's because of laziness or a lack of skill or passion. I think it's the runtime that's to blame. I just don't think that 6 episodes is enough to tell this story in a way that's even remotely fleshed out. When I think about it, I realize that Bible Black doesn't waste any time, which is actually pretty unusual for a mediocre story. Every moment was dedicated to either establishing or advancing the plot, or the hentai scenes, which actually do serve a purpose that I'll talk about in a bit. And those scenes were actually pretty short by hentai standards. The time they had was utilized surprisingly effectively. It's just that cramming it all into 6 episodes of 30 minutes each, minus credits and the lengthy recap segments which bring it to a pretty much standard anime episode length, didn't leave room for anything more than the bare necessities. So most of my issues with the writing specifically stem from a lack of time to properly flesh things out. I couldn't really buy the closeness between Minase and Imari because they don't really interact on screen except to advance the plot. Minase was extremely one-note, undermining the core emotional conflict because there wasn't any time dedicated showcasing his personality except for when he's motivated by lust. The third act felt like it was fueled by cheap twists and reveals that lacked proper foundation because there wasn't time to do anything but move the plot directly from beat to beat. The writers did the best with what they had, but what they had wasn't enough. And I don't know that anyone is really even to blame here. I could tell at a glance that this was a relatively low-budget production, and more episodes would mean more costs, which I'm guessing just wasn't a possibility. I think Bible Black is ultimately a victim of its financial constraints, alongside the inherent difficulty of adapting a multi-route visual novel into a single storyline while also including scenes from different routes. But is that my final takeaway? Is this series just another drop in the sea of mediocrity? Well, no. The story itself ended up being thoroughly mid, and the flashiest scenes didn't have the animation quality they really needed, but Bible Black excels in one key aspect. It fucking nailed the tone and atmosphere that it was going for. It's true that I didn't find the story very compelling as a whole, but the individual components all worked really well. The human sacrifice at the start was creepy and unnerving. When characters are being manipulated by magic, everything just feels off. Kitami is a terrifying and imposing villain. Moments of triumph and despair really make you feel it. The combination of the hymnal-inspired soundtrack, the extreme nature of key scenes, and the constantly building tension make it so every significant moment makes you feel the way the writers wanted you to feel. If you only considered individual scenes, you've got something really impressive here. It's just that as a complete package, it kind of falls apart because what you have is a collection of strong scenes built on a flimsy foundation. And it makes me wonder what the writers could have accomplished with a longer runtime, and it also makes me curious about the visual novel, which I may end up reading even if there's not enough interest to justify making a video. There's definitely something here, and I can imagine it shining under the right circumstances. I also have to acknowledge a major reason Bible Black succeeds in the unique ways that it does. The sex scenes. No, really. Hentai in general has a reputation for sex scenes that serve no real purpose except to jack off to. That is not the vibe I got from Bible Black at all. While the sex scenes are certainly functional in that regard depending on your personal tastes, they served more to convey a particular tone. For example, the first sex scene is between Minase and the student council president Shiraki, who was under the effects of a love spell. The acts themselves were that of a loving sexual encounter, but the haste at which Shiraki propositions Minase and the clear mismatch between Shiraki's artificial love, major props to her voice actress for how well she sold that by the way, and Minase's pure lust made it very unsettling because you could tell it wasn't authentic. Some scenes were designed to enhance Kitami's overpowering aura, showcasing her power and control and letting the mask slip just a bit to reveal the depths of her cruelty. Every character to fall to Kitami was basically mind-broken over the course of a sexual encounter. There are scenes designed to fill Minase, and by proxy the audience, with despair as he's forced to accept the reality that someone he cares about is being violated or outright corrupted and he's powerless to stop it. It's hard to really explain since I obviously can't show you what I'm talking about on YouTube, but every single sex scene except for one is designed to make you uncomfortable, and it fucking works. Bible Black may be an edgy hentai, but while you can certainly bust a nut or two if that's what you're into, it's clear that they had a greater goal in mind than just being a vector for sex. None of the sex scenes were filler, and they all had a purpose. If nothing else, I think that's pretty neat. So do I recommend Bible Black? Honestly, it's hard to say. It definitely has its strengths, and it definitely succeeded in keeping me on edge, but the entire package ended up being empty and unsatisfying. The moment-to-moment events are engaging on the surface, but you never end up really giving a shit about any of the characters. Bible Black is a series operating on pure vibes. You can let it take you on a ride, but once you get off, there's nothing about it that makes you want to get back on. I can't say that you'll regret it, I mean, I had a decent time overall, but if you're anything like me, you'll be left with a sour taste in your mouth, disappointed by just how hollow it truly is. I'm personally quite annoyed that this video is only going to be about 10 minutes long because of how little substance there is to the writing. There are certainly worse ways to kill a few hours, but if I had to guess, you're probably better off just reading the visual novel. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's probably everything I like about the OVA, but part of a complete package. But if it does intrigue you, by all means check it out. Just understand that it's like cotton candy. Enjoyable in the moment, but it will not leave you satisfied. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to my members, especially my $10 members Bulk Squat Thrust, President Irina Vladimirovna Putina, and Robert Lay. All channel members got to see this video early, so if that interests you, you can join below for as little as $1 a month. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more in the future. And leave any suggestions for me in the comments. I do enjoy these types of videos despite how frustrating this one in particular was to make. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Play the electro swing.
Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back.